All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when we or where you are listening to this live. This is the voice and the face of Dr. Olabintan, Livingspring Family Medical Center, where we believe in helping our patients live long and well because we believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. All right, sorry, bear with me. Um, I'm texting, communicating with the guest, Miss Ronke Edoho. She's maybe having a little bit of technical difficulty, so hopefully she'll be joining us soon. Um, all right, give me 1 second. So, anyway, we help our patients live long and well because we believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. And today we'll be talking about how to enjoy our traditional foods um, in a healthy way. All right. And this is going to be the Afro Edition. As many of you may know, I am Nigerian. And so this conversation comes up a lot, how to enjoy our foods because our food is a big part of our culture. And so it becomes an issue when some of these foods have to be modified. And so we're going to have our guest, Ms. Ronke Edoho, who is a nutritionist, answer some of the questions that we may have. So let me see if she's going to be joining us soon. All right. Um, okay. All right. Hi, Dr. Una. Thank you for joining. Hi, Grace. Thank you so much for joining. Guys, give me a few more minutes. Let me just see what the holdup is. Let's see. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Looks like we're having some technical difficulty. Hang in there. Oh, hang in there, people. All right. Click on link. All right. So the first question I had for her was obviously to introduce herself when she joins us. I guess we'll do that. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and start the live because you guys are here and I don't want to have you miss out on something that's also very important. So a big part of our culture is our food. All right. And many of you can agree that sometimes these conversations when we talk about, how can we enjoy some of these foods in a healthy fashion because it's part of who we are. um, and, of course, I grew up in Nigeria, and so a lot of our foods are very highly flavored, um, greasy, oily, but delicious. And what we're starting to see, or what we're starting to understand, and this is something that's happened, I mean, we've known for years, is that all foods that are too oily are actually not the best for us. Now, you argue, well, this is something I've grown up with, right? It's something I've always eaten. My parents ate it, my grandmothers ate it. So, what could be wrong? Well, we're finding that foods that are very high in oils and, high in starch increase the risk of heart disease, increase the risk of kidney disease, increase the risk of strokes, and increase the risk for high blood pressure. And so, it's a need for us to make some adjustments without necessarily giving up on enjoying these foods that are so dear to our hearts. As many of you also know, I am a foodie. I do enjoy eating good food, but there's a balance to it because as you get older, right, you want to still be able to enjoy this food. You still want to be able to enjoy the things that bring you joy. Um, you know, you want to enjoy them in good health. Okay, and I'll paint this scenario for you. I had over the past few years, I've interviewed a lot of patients, many in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And my favorite group, no offense to those who are younger, the 90s, the 80s, my patients who are non-Nigerians, so those who are over 90. And one of the things I've done is ask them what they've done. What would they say to the younger generation? What would they say were tips to living long and well? And one of the things they always echoed is healthy eating. Even those, including my grandmother, who died at the ripe old age of 92. Okay, she didn't eat sugar. She did eat our traditional foods, but she was very, very active, and she ate a lot of fresh fruits and veggies. So the whole idea today is the talk on balance. How can we enjoy these foods but not shoot our own foot at the same time, right? And so that's why we're having Miss Ronke join us, but it looks like she's having a little bit of issues. She says she may not be able to join us for another 10 minutes. So we'll go ahead. Why we go ahead and keep talking. All right. So the first question I was going to have her answer is: we love oil in our food. How do we adjust? All right. All right. So I want to kind of give us a little bit of a backdrop. We kind of got in that habit of frying foods because it helps preserve the food. Do you agree? Right? So it keeps the food fresher longer. So frying had become part of that culture. And I'm speaking, if you come from Nigeria, we tend to fry a lot of foods because it preserves, it doesn't go bad. So you don't need to put it in the fridge, or it can stay outside the fridge for, a couple hours, few days. And so it doesn't go bad. And so you can enjoy the food longer. Now, the longer you fried it, right, it seemed that the longer it would last fresh, or it would last still able to eat. And so this became a big part of our culture. So a lot of frying, a lot of oils. And while that's the fact, it doesn't mean that it has to remain the same. And so there are ways that we can still enjoy some of the fried foods, but not actually having it deep fried. I don't know how, if any of you are familiar with it. Of course, we're familiar with an air fryer. There are ways that you can actually enjoy. I don't know if you guys, plantains. I'm a big fan of plantains. I like the sweet plantains, the not too ripe ones, where you can fry them or you could grill them. There are ways now where you could use the oven, you could use the air fryer, you can make little gashes in the plantain, flip it, the other way, make little gashes, put a little bit of oil and grill and still enjoy plantain, right? No, it's not deep fried, but it's still plantain. So you still get the essence of it. So those are things we want to talk about here. Another thing, one of my favorite dishes, and forgive me for those who may not understand this, I'm going to explain it. Efo is one of my favorite traditional dishes, and that's it's like a stewed vegetable. It's made with the broth of freshly cooked meats, mostly usually goat meat or cow meat, depending on what your favorites are. And it's seasoned, and then it's the spinach, or you could use kale, or you could use different types of vegetables, depending on you. But mostly I use spinach. You could actually cook that in a very hot oil, palm oil, which is rich in vitamin E. And it's seasoned, and it's so delicious. And that smoked oil taste is what makes this soup really distinct. Now, of course, frying oils in heavy or in high temperature it has its downsides as far as the damages to cells on the smaller level. So you don't want to do too much of that, okay? And you don't want to do too much of that oil as well. And so one of the things that Ronke, and I'm sure when she comes, we'll talk about that briefly too, is that you could actually enjoy a fariro, but maybe you could wait to put the oil last as opposed to first, so you don't have to use as much. Okay, so that's the whole idea, is finding healthy hacks that you can still enjoy the traditional foods, but not necessarily in the most unhealthy way. Okay, so this is not to say, oh, you can't eat this, you got to eat bird food all day. No, it's saying, how can we adjust? Yes, this is what we've known. This is what we're used to. But how can we adjust for the sake of living long and well? And that's why these talks are important. Another thing, jollof rice. I'm not here to start a war. Nigerian jollof rice is the best. Yes, I did say that, but I come in peace. And jollof rice is a big part of our culture. You're happy, you're going to celebrate with somebody, jollof rice. You're sad, there's a burial, jollof rice. And so it's something that, is it's life, jollof rice. Okay. If you can relate, please just write it there, jollof rice. But one of the things we know about jollof rice is cooked with rice, white rice, right? You have to use the white rice, the enriched white rice, usually the parboiled white rice. So it's already been processed. And this is where people sometimes, get a little confused, like, well, it's rice. I thought rice was good. Well, if you're eating brown rice, or you're even using one of the rice that we use called ofada rice, the rice is not as processed, so meaning it hasn't been stripped of most of the fiber. When we use parboiled rice, most of the fiber has already been removed, and so what you're eating is a lot of starch that tends to keep your sugars high if eating in too much quantity, or if you are predisposed to diabetes. Okay, and so we're used to eating parboiled rice. I've tried to eat. I actually made a brown rice jollof rice one time, and no, it does not taste the same. So one of the things we can do, instead of saying, "Oh, well, I'm just going to eat jollof rice. I cannot eat any other rice," we can say, "We eat jollof rice, but how can we make it in a way that is not as starchy?" Okay. If you want to be brave, try brown rice, jollof rice. Yes, the rice, the texture is different, but if you use the same flavors that you use to cook the jollof rice, it's not as bad. It's the flavor is still there, just the texture is different. So, if you can just adjust the texture a little bit, I think it's still worth the try. Another thing you could do is, instead of how we do the mountain jollof rice, we do like this, mountain, then you put the stew, then you put the fried plantains. Well, by the time you do the typical serving size that we are used to growing up, it's usually equivalent to about 1,500 calories. Easy. I'm not kidding you. I'm not exaggerating. If you don't believe me, go ahead and look for an app. MyFitnessPal. Thank you, Jess. Thank you for watching. MyFitnessPal, and put in, jollof rice. Put it in, or put how much rice you're eating, how much chicken, and see how many calories it is. A lot of times people don't realize that, when you're these foods, they're so richly cooked, and a lot of things are embedded in them that they're actually heavier than they appear. Okay, and just as a and this is me speaking in general, in general terms, most of our foods, as Nigerian, I'm saying this, they're heavy calories, because that's how we were raised. You didn't finish your food, they will yell at you, "Finish it." You know how many people don't have food? So you were almost forced to eat foods much more than you needed to eat, because that's how we were raised. But the beautiful thing about the human body, the human being, is that we can change. We can still enjoy these foods, but now that we know more about them, we can adjust for our health, all for living long and well. All right, so our guest is here. Thank you all for hanging in. How are you doing? Can you hear me? Okay.
I can. Hi.
Okay. Welcome.
Yeah, and I apologize. I'm super on time, but I think there's a mix-up in CST. So my CST time currently is 12:43.
You serious?
I'm serious.
Wow. Okay.
So I think there's probably like a time change thing. I'm in Saskatchewan.
Yes.
So if you Google current time, CST Saskatchewan is 12:43.
Oh my goodness.
I was planning for this actually 1:30 my time.
Oh my gosh.
So
CST Texas time. Wow. We're here.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. We've been waiting for you. We're so excited. So for those of you who've been watching, thank you so much. Hang in. Let your friends know that she's here now. I know you were enjoying me talk, but we have her here. So awesome. So real quick, please introduce yourself. Who are you and what you do?
So again, my apologies. Time is a sensitive thing for me, so I really don't like to be late for things. But my name is Ronke Edoho. I am the founder of Foodie and Losing Nigerian. So what I do is I present traditional recipes, and I also give alternatives in terms of like presenting those traditional recipes in healthier ways, because as we know, we're not living like our ancestors in 2022. So it's not always possible to eat like they did. So we present healthier alternatives to traditional recipes. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. And I got to say real quick, real shout out to you. I have sent patients to you. You've been very helpful. And they've been losing weight and feeling better. And so big shout out. I love what you do. All right. So my first question, which I tried to answer, but I want to get your perspective. I said a big part of our culture is our food. And so some of these conversations can be tough. for instance, you say, oh, you can't eat this, you can't eat this. You're like, I grew up eating this.
Yeah.
You're almost like trying to shake my cultural background here. So what would you say to that?
So I think that a lot of us, especially, the reference is always, well, my grandparent ate like this, or my grandma is 120 years old. She lives in the village and she's this healthy. But I think what we tend to take out of the conversation is access. It's not the same. When your grandparents lived in a village, they probably only had access to things that were local and available to them. So things came in seasons. So you couldn't eat, say, mackerel fish, for example, all year long. You couldn't eat goat meat all year long. But we now live in a culture or in an environment where it's possible to get access to a lot of things, a lot of high fat, high sugar, high carb things, and in quantities that have never been seen before. So I think that if we're going to live in the modern world, we need to adjust our diet to the reality of our current perspective, and not constantly reference the past in terms of, well, we've eaten like this for generations. Well, we have, but it's really not the same. It's not apples to apples. So we do not have to ditch our traditional approach to food, but we need to adjust it to our modern lifestyle.
We got to adjust it because we have access to more junk food. No. And I have someone who commented, hey, Inka, thank you so much for joining Dr. Inka. She says, this is important because I want to eat amala with roundabout and still look good. So these conversations are very important. And hi, Zaina, thank you so much for joining. All right. Next question is, we love oil in our food. How do we adjust? There's a taste that comes from the oil, and that's been embedded in our DNA. So, okay.
So I think the first thing I would say is that your food does not have to shine to be tasty. I know that, there is a tendency, especially, Yoruba people, we like shine food. We like that. If the oil is at the top, that is when the food is ready, right? But I think the first thing to remember is that the visual of the oil and the flavor are two separate things. So a good example is ayamashi. The foundation for cooking ayamashi is the bleached oil. That's what gives it the flavor, the unique flavor that comes from ayamashi, right? But whether you use half a cup of oil for your pot of stew, or you use 3 cups of oil for your cup of stew, the flavor is still there. The secondary part for us is that shine at the top. That is when we know. So I think that the first place I tell my client to go is you need to separate the two. You need to separate the flavor of that you're getting from the food from the visual of the oil, because at the end of the day, it's in the visual. It's that visual that a lot of us are chasing. That's where we keep adding oil, and we keep adding oil when we're cooking, just because we can't see the oil at the top. We can't see it, So I think that the first place to go is always to think, am I adding this oil as a flavor, or am I adding it for a visual? And if you're adding it for a visual, then that is definitely the wrong approach. Because you're not eating for the visual of it. You're eating to nourish your body.
Wow, I like the mindset. So mindful cooking and mindful eating, very important. People, they say presentation is key. So we're used to the red with the oil and the bubbly, and it's the bright red stew. So really important for those who are watching. Focus more on the taste. It doesn't have to look oily to be delish. Focus on enhancing and enjoying, not enhancing, but enjoying the flavors that come presented to you, even if it's not greasy looking. Awesome. I was going to say something real quick before I ask the last question, the next question. People give the comment that, my grandfather lived to 100, and my great aunt did the same thing. So, whatever they're doing, I want to do. A lot of the foods they had access to were also organic, and they were also less sedentary. They were walking a lot of places. So a lot of things have changed. So we can't use that excuse anymore. And this is not to nag anyone. This is to encourage us. This is to empower us to enjoy our foods and enjoy it in a way that will produce longevity. I would say this real quick. You don't see a 90-year-old overweight person. You don't see that. So really important, these conversations. All right, next question. You cannot go wrong with jollof rice. Nigerian jollof rice. Give us health tips on how we can still enjoy rice without increasing the risk for health conditions like diabetes. Real quick, what would you say?
So I think first thing first, I know Dr. Olabintan was talking about brown rice. I'm personally not a fan of brown rice because I think personally it tastes like cod, but for the most part. So usually if I'm going to do jollof, I'm going to try to go for, because I think that we need to understand eating and getting satisfaction from the food is not just about the volume. It's not just about how you feel, when the food hits your belly, right? It's about how you feel even before you start eating the food. So when you look at a plate of food, for example, and you're like, this thing is brown rice, I'm not going to be full, I'm not going to enjoy it. You're already thinking about what you're going to eat to get some sort of enjoyment after, because you're approaching it as though it's punishment, not nourishment for your body. So a good place to go is, first of all, to gain an understanding of why Dr. Olabintan is saying brown rice is better for you than white rice. Why is brown rice better than white rice? Has more fiber, right? If you look at, the micronutrient profile, there are more micronutrients in the brown rice. So if I do want to enjoy my jollof and not feel like I'm being punished, I'm going to cook my jollof with my white rice. Sure. I'm going to make sure that I'm eating it in a portion that is healthy. So not mountain of food. So I'm going to do maybe a cup and a half of cooked jollof, be it, white rice, because I like white rice, but I'm going to find other sources of fiber. So I'm not just I'm just doing jollof and meat. That is it. We are done. Right? I'm going to look at maybe steamed broccoli or steamed cauliflower or some stir-fried kale or some stir-fried, efotete or something. That's a good source of fiber. I'm also diversifying the micronutrients on my plate because I know that Dr. Olabintan said I need better fiber and I need more micronutrients. But I also want to feel like I am not punishing myself. So I'm going to stick with the portion she's recommended. I'm going to use white rice because I feel like I'm going to be better satisfied, but I'm going to increase the nutrient diversity of my plate without necessarily increasing the calories. And I'm not saying add a foriro because that's a completely different meal, right? It's not add a foriro with meat and shaki and orishirishi. No, I'm going to do a steamed broccoli, or I'm going to have some sort of kale stir fry on the side that I've just stir fried and added like a little bit of seasoning to, or I'm going to do some sort of vegetables. Now I have the fiber, I've diversified the micronutrients on the plate, and I'm also getting the satisfaction that, I'm not punishing myself, I'm nourishing my body.
Food not as punishment starts in the mind. I love it. All right. You mentioned efforiro. We talked about that a little bit earlier. It's one of my favorite dishes to make and to eat. Do overcooked vegetables count as a veggie serving? And when I say overcooked, you know how we have to really cook for oblivion. No more green. So you're a nutritionist, please. What would you say to that?
So no, they do not, because at the end of the day, you have killed all of the vitamins and minerals and everything. Well, most of the vitamins that are not eatable, and therefore you've killed it, and now it's just fiber that is left, that you're consuming. So overcooked vegetables typically it would not be recommended for you to overcook your vegetables. So some like efo, right? The process of getting flavor in efforiro is in the stewing process of the base. So if you know that your base is still 15 minutes from being ready, there's no reason for you to add your effort into it at this time. Things like okra, when you're cooking soups, your vegetables should be the last thing just before you turn off the heat. And remember, a lot of us are also cooking to eat later. So I'm cooking this effort and I'm still going to eat it on Wednesday. So you're still going to reheat it at that point in time. So you have to consider all of those things when you're cooking so that you're not really just eating empty fiber at the end of the day. So Vegetables should be added at the end stage of cooking when you're cooking soups, especially things that are, super vegetable based, like a foriro or, okra soup.
Awesome, awesome. I was going to ask. So people are watching and they're like, I'm about to go to a wedding or go to a party, Niger party, and they're going to have everything laid out before me. What am I supposed to do? How do I navigate those waters?
One, eat before you go. I know when I tell my clients, they're like, what? What do you mean that you eat before I go? I'm going for a party. No. You're going for a party because you're going there to celebrate. It's not for you to go there and be you're going there to celebrate. You have food at home. I always tell my client, for like there is food at home. There is food. There's no scarcity of food, right? So the first thing I always recommend is eat before you go. If you know that you're not going to be able to control yourself when you go out, eat before you go. That way, when you do go out, your portion automatically reduces, because you don't want to be the person that is wasting food at a party. That's just not okay. And you also have better control when your belly is not empty. So be it a green smoothie, be it a quick toast, be it something. Don't go to a party on an empty stomach, because you will not be able to control yourself. So that is one. Two, I try to stick to things that are not composite meals. So, for example, if I go to a party and I know that, I don't know who the caterer is, the food looks super oily, this doesn't fit into whatever the goal is that I'm trying to achieve, I try to go for things that are not composite. So I would go for, say, white rice over jollof rice.
Okay.
Because white rice, is just boiled rice. You can see it. It's just plain. It's just seasoned white rice. Jollof rice, you don't know the amount of oil that's in it. You don't know what else. You really cannot control that. But you can control the amount of white rice you eat. You can control the amount of sauce you put on it. You can, So I always recommend not going for composite meals if you know that those things do not fit into your goal, or the way they've been cooked doesn't necessarily fit into the goal that you're trying to accomplish. And then don't go on an empty stomach, because that way you can control how much food you're eating, and you're not going to be wasteful or overindulge in that sense.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned this. Now, one of the things that's classic at parties is salad. Sorry, please, I come in peace. Salad. And so let's talk about our salad with the Heinz, the white bottle, that's inside, really embedded in it. Can we shed some light on that salad? How do we tackle that one?
So Nigerian salad is not a salad, first of all. So when your doctor tells you to eat more salad, that's not the kind they are talking about. So I think that's a good when Dr. Olabintan says I need you to eat more salad, it's not that one that they are talking about. So it's more the leafy greens, the dark leafy greens, dressed in a very, very light dressing. That's what they're typically talking about when they tell you to eat more salad. But the Nigerian salad, I wouldn't recommend approaching it as a salad. Actually, I think I have a reel with kind of like the calorie breakdown either on the Niger Foodie account or the Lane account. But the Nigerian salad is a meal. And when you approach it as a meal, it is not even a healthy one at that, right? Because you're looking at a lot of cream, a lot of dressing, baked beans that is, high sodium, it's canned, and then you're looking at a lot of like processed meat. So some people will even put things like corned beef inside the salad, which is, unhealthy, layered on unhealthy. So when the doc says eat more salad, it's not that one that they're talking about.
And it's because even I had to be more conscious to really get that. The typical salad dressing, a teaspoon, not even a tablespoon, contains almost 30% of the amount of fat you should have in one day. So we're not making these things up. That's the truth. It's just now we're more conscious of what we're putting into our body. Yeah. Okay. Hi, Mr. Randy. Thank you so much for joining. So my next question to you is this. For those who are watching, who are saying, I get all of this, but it feels a little overwhelming. It seems like what you're telling me to do is to throw away all the food that I've been eating and start eating, small portions. And what would you say to that person who is watching and say, okay, what are next steps for me? I want to eat better, but I'm used to these kind of foods. This is what is made in my house. How would you approach, or how would you answer maybe 3 or 4 steps for the person who's
Okay.
watching and wants to make changes?
So I think the very first thing is to remember that this isn't punishment, right? Eating better is not, no one is trying to punish you. The doctor isn't just saying things to like frustrate you. Food is not punishment, right? That's the first thing. Let's just look at it from that perspective. And secondly, approach your plate from a point of nourishing your body, right? When you eat breakfast in the morning and you see there's bacon, there's sausage, there's oil, fried egg, and then 6 slices of toast with butter on it. What does this food do for me? Am I eating this because this is just how I eat? Or am I eating this to nourish my body? And when you ask yourself that question, you will know subconsciously that this is not nourishing my body. So how do I make it more nourishing? Can I, go for a little bit of fruit? Can I go for a little bit of vegetables? Can I not do bacon and sausage? It's in having those conversations and keeping yourself conscious. That's how you start to approach it as like a lifestyle modification, not punishment. So always, every time you eat it, every time you're about to put something in your body, is this nourishing? Does this nourish me? Or is this something that, is going to give me problems down the line? Because no one has to tell you, don't eat A, don't eat B, don't eat C.
Right.
Right. No one should be telling you that. It's just, am I nourishing myself, and does this nourish my body? That is how you should approach every plate of food. And that, takes me to the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, you want to eat things that are nourishing to you. You want to, Monday to Friday, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to move my body. Monday to Friday, I am going to make sure that I have vegetables at my meals. I have my servings of fruit and vegetables. I'm not eating a oily, mess all of the time. And then 20% of the time, I can have a cookie, or I can have something that I find to be, special. But those special meals should not be what make up most of what you're eating, right? So, and then portion control. Portion control is somewhere where a lot of Nigerians, I'm just going to eat less. But again, if you're familiar with our channels, I will recommend watching a video that we did. I think it's called Moi Moi versus Moi Moi. And we showed 2 different approaches to cooking moi moi. One wrap ended up being twice the calories of the other wrap. And that is just in the choices that you're making. You're cooking, the amount of oil, the amount of fish. Do I need it to be elemimeje, as Yoruba people will say? Do I really need 7 lives inside this moi moi? Do I need it to have corned beef and fish and all of these things? Why do you need it to have all of those things, right? It's not for flavor, because it's already flavorful. So the first approach is not portion control, because you're eating your 1 wrap of moi moi versus somebody that is eating their 2 wraps of moi moi. You are still eating the same amount calorie-wise, but that person is eating a larger volume. There's, a better chance that they're going to be fuller for a longer period of time, and they're probably going to lose weight at a different rate if weight loss is the goal, because you're fuller, you're not snacking excessively. They're eating more in their volume, but the way they've decided to cook is different, is healthier. So don't wait for it to be to the point where you're putting the food on your plate, that you're controlling the portion. Start with the way you're cooking, with the less oil, with the grilling instead of frying, with choosing leaner protein, not just high fat. I'm going to eat beef, and then I'm going to eat mackerel fish only, and then I'm going to do this, high calorie, high fat all of the time. And then is when I'm trying to eat that I'm going to portion control. Healthy starts from when you're cooking, not when you're eating the food.
Wow. Healthy starts from when you're cooking the food, not when you're eating the food. And I love the 80-20 rule. It seems that rule applies on many different aspects of life, but I like 80% of the time you should eat something that's nutritious for you. 20%, give yourself some leeway to indulge. But But all of this is to help us live long and well, so we can enjoy our children, enjoy our grandchildren, enjoy those things that matter to us, in a way where we are able to control our bodies, right? So that's the whole essence of this talk. This has been so good. Now people are watching and they're saying, I like this Niger foodie. Love the name, by the way. And they're saying, where can we find you to connect with you, to have you come? We'll be sure to tell you the correct time zones and all of that. So we make sure we don't have kind of a hiccup. Well, where can people find you, sis?
So you can always find us on Instagram. So I'm at Niger Foodie. That's kind of the home account. But in terms of like healthier Nigerian options, we're at Lose It Nigerian, not Lose It Nigeria. It's Lose It Nigerian. And what we hope to do is help you eat your pounded yam and egusi soup and whatever else that you enjoy, but we start with a healthier approach to cooking so that you can still enjoy food in good volume. You don't serve yourself and say, is this for my 2-year-old or is this for me? Because I'm trying to do portion control. So we try to educate on how you start from the way you cook, up to how you're combining your meals. So you can find us at Losing Nigerian or on Instagram or any social media, or losingnigerian.com.
All right. I want to give a shout out to your program, the belly trimmer one. Yeah, I had a few patients do that and they love it. The belly trimmer. Well, yeah, it's really good. So thank you so much for what you do. I would definitely be having you back because this is a very, very important topic. It's very dear to my heart because it's sometimes it can be tough, but you break it down in a way that's easy, and I'm so excited that you do what you do. So I'll be sure to put that information after this live as where people can connect with you. All right. So thank you all. And thank you so much, Ronke, for joining us. I appreciate you joining, even with the inconvenience of the time differences. So thank you so much.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me. It's always exciting having these conversations. I love watching your feed on Facebook. I'm like, oh, what's she talking about today, right? Sometimes when I can join, I do join it. But I think that, preventative medicine, like you always say, we don't want you to be on medication all of the time. We want you to be able to get off. So when Dr. O is saying do this, is honestly not punishment. It's because there's reason to it. There's reason to you moving more, to you cooking better, to you eating in better portions. And food doesn't have to be punishments, really.
And you know what's so funny? I'll say this before we close. A lot of times it may seem like we want the numbers, your cholesterol to look pretty, your diabetes to be 0, and you're like, okay, what is in it for me? A lot of times what I'll ask the patient, I'll say, how do you feel? When you've changed this, how do you feel? And they're like, yeah, I feel better. I have more energy. I sleep better. I said, I want you to remember that. So when those decisions come, when you have to make decisions again in the public, especially when it's a party, you remember how you feel and you hold on to what you've done. Yeah. All right. So this is good. These conversations are important. Thank you so much, Ebere, for joining. We've had a lot of people join in comments. When you have a chance, Ms. Ronke, I want you to go. A lot of activity here. So this has been good. Thank you all for watching. And on that note, if you or anyone you know is looking for an awesome, a passionate, and a thoroughgoing physician in the Texas area, I am she. Have a good one. Thank you so much for watching.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.